By the end of this video, we will better understand different terms used in transition problems, such as branching processes, gambler's ruin, and Markov chains. Let's get started. A scientist has discovered a way to create a new element. The scientist studied the new element and observed some of its properties. The element has a lifespan of 1 week, then it evaporates. The element can produce offspring. The creation of the offspring is distributed as follows: 0 75%, 1 20%, and 2 5%. The probability that the element will eventually die out is pi sub 0 equals 1. Determine which of the following best describes the above process. For this problem, you just need to know all the solution options that we have, what those terms mean, and then you'll know what the answer is. I would also say that you can kind of intuit what some of these these options are to a certain extent, and kind of have a good educated guess. So this is definitely something that I wasn't really prepared for. I think I guessed the correct solution initially, and then I kind of dug more into what each of these things are. So let's just jump into that. So first off, a branching process, and this ends up being the correct solution, is just the probability of ultimate extinction given a rate of offspring. So really just exactly what this problem is. When you have, a bacteria or some event that can split off into more offspring, those types of problems that could go off into infinity, and is a question generally of is the population going to explode, or is it going to die out, or is it going to kind of settle somewhere? And that's what this pi is denoting, is the probability it'll eventually die out is 100% in this specific case. So that's what a branching process is, and you can see that because if you were to draw off, you have one dot, and then it can split off into two, and then splits off into more, and then it just blows up exponentially or dies out. You're just building a bunch of branches from child nodes from the parent node. So I think that's why they call it a branching process. Number 2, gambler's ruin. So if you watched the previous video, question 10, that deals with gambler's ruin problems, and these are just problems where specifically you are either going to win or lose a round, and then you're going to win or lose the game once you achieve a certain number of tokens. So I can say, I have 50 tokens, and I'm going to quit once I get to 100 or down to 0. And that would be a gambler's ruin problem, where you're trying to estimate the probability that you'll eventually be ruined or have nothing. Next, we have a periodic Markov chain. So for this problem, this corresponds to, and this is something that I don't think I've seen in a question in any other of the past exams, or this one, besides it as an option. So this isn't something I would study too intensely, is my sense, but just since we have it here, is where, given you're in state I, the chance that you'll return to state I has some periodicity, I don't know what the term would be, but some kind of increment other than something that steps by 1. So, I can get back to my original state in 6 steps or 8 steps or 10 steps that has a period of 2. And this is what you're not going to commonly see. So typically, in Markov chain problems we see on previous MAS1 exams, they are aperiodic. That is, there isn't this period, and normally there's typically a possibility that there's a value of 1, right? You can just immediately jump back onto yourself, such as staying in the same state, to put it another way. So typically we deal with aperiodic, so again, not something I would worry too intensely on in terms of what you're studying. And then we have time reversible Markov chains. So this is, I don't have it written out here, but when we talk about our long-term expected values for Markov chains, what we do is we say your current state multiplied by the transition matrix equals your current state, and then you solve for the current state, right? Because you're saying that eventually I'm going to reach some point where when I multiply it by the transition matrix, it doesn't change anything. That's what the long-term expected value is going to end up being. Time reversible is where if you were to flip all the probabilities, which is effectively going reverse in time, right? Instead of saying, there's a 10% chance I go from state A to state B, if you want to look backwards in time, then you would say there's a 10% chance I go from B to A. So you flip all of those things, and then you see if you have the exact same ending result for that steady state, and that's saying that it's time reversible. It doesn't change the expected long-term expected value of probability in each state, whether you look forward or backward in time. Again, this is similar to the periodic Markov chain. I don't think I've seen this anywhere in past exams other than this question. So I would say this is another thing that if you study Markov chains, this is, they probably scrolled through the chapter, picked out something super specific, and then threw it into this problem. I'm sure they could have a curveball question in the future, but I don't get a sense that this is something I'd worry too much about. Then finally, I have here that we don't need no calculation. So again, you just need to know, really all you need to know is what a branching process is, and you can answer this question. I would recommend knowing what Gambler's Ruin is because it shows up on every past exam, I believe. So you definitely should know what Gambler's Ruin problem is. And then even if you don't know periodic or time reversible, you should know what a Markov chain process is. And this isn't going from one state to another. This is offspring. So it's, offspring and parents transitioning to children, but they're not really states. So just from that, you could probably infer this isn't going to be an answer that has to do with Markov processes. So with all that said, we recognize that all of this is just a branching process. So A is our final answer. With that said, thank you for watching. I appreciate you taking the time to watch these videos. If you really want to help me out, please consider liking or subscribing. Have a good one.